The shutdown is underway. I'll update you on the Schumer shutdown with Senators John Cornyn and Dan Sullivan later in the program. But I'm so pleased to begin today with Leland Vittert. Leland is, of course, the host of On Balance with Leland Vittert over at News Nation. But far more importantly, for the purposes of today, he's the author of this fabulous book, Born Lucky. And Leland, welcome. Congratulations on this. I haven't been this surprised or this moved in a long time than I was by Born Lucky, and I bet I'm not alone in that. Am I?
No, you are not. We have sold out now on Amazon twice. Barnes & Noble still has copies. You can go to Amazon right now and put in your order for Born Lucky. We're getting like 1,000 books a day into Amazon, and 20,000 arrive Wednesday of next week, and then another 30,000 after that. And we've hit this nerve, not because I'm anything special, but I think it's because so many people are reading the book and hearing the story, and it's doing what it meant to do, which is provide hope to every parent who has a struggling kid. You know, it is about my dad raising me when he figured out that I had autism and adapting me to the world, not the world to me. But this idea of hope, and in the words of George Will, who wrote the foreword, the mountain moving power of parental love is resonating because nobody is willing to talk about that right now. And it's not something the experts spend a lot of time reinforcing.
I think it's an incredibly courageous book because you really laid it out there. Junior high and high school are rough, and college, Northwestern, Medill is rough, and the broadcast business is rough. But mostly, I want to start by, it's two books. So you want to be a foreign correspondent. That's a very good book. Anyone who wants to be a foreign correspondent should read it. They'll pass it out at Medill for years. But it's really for a book for every parent with a child with an intellectual disability, every family member of a child with an intellectual disability, every kid with an intellectual disability who can read or have it read to them. And Leland, I got to say, it's also a book for adults who may not be in your family but may know about kids with an intellectual disability, because I want to run down some names for you. Bert Stepping, Terry Hess, Rick Smith, Stan Mick, Tom Stenner, Skippy Kiefer, Sandra Muller, Rob McClain, John Feldman, Brad Remington. These are all people who were good to you. I mean, you don't name one person who was bad to you, but you tell the story of every person who helped you.
Exactly. And I'm glad you picked up on that, Hugh. It shows your compassion and your understanding of this. This book wasn't about settling scores, okay? I remember the art teacher in 8th grade who didn't think I was going to become Picasso and said in front of the entire class, if my dog was as ugly as you, Vittert, I'd shave its ass and make it walk backwards. I remember his name. I didn't use it in the book because it wasn't about score settling, number one. And number two, I wanted to let people know, adults know, just how much being kind to a kid who's having a hard time, as clearly I did, does. It's extraordinary. Obviously, this is so important for every parent to read. I think you make a great point. The second point, though, is it is so important for the message to get out of what cruelty can do to kids. And then, as you point out, the more important message, what kindness can do.
Well, you know what? I cannot believe the English teacher. I cannot believe the choral teacher. I actually got angry at the choral teacher. And I don't, normally don't read books with emotion, but I'm following your way along here. And believe me, we can go toe to toe on uncoordinated, but I was the kid who was always talking, but not like you. Your dad tapping his watch. Would you tell that story? Because I think that's a fabulous story.
Yeah, look, Dad's mission from when I was 5 years old was to figure out how to adapt me to the world. And I had a lot of various classic symptoms of autism we'll go through at some point, the moment I was diagnosed, and how helpless and hopeless he felt he was. But he realized that I didn't understand the world the way the world worked, socially, emotionally, in social interaction. So I'll give you an example, Hugh. I only had Dad, right? I had no friends my own age, so I spent countless hours with him. He decided that he would be my friend. And so I started talking about the news and politics and business very young. And let's just say we were going out to lunch with Mr. Hewitt, which was always the best thing in the world to do because I love being with adults because some of them, as you would have been, would be nice to me. And I would just start in before we would even sit down with question after question after question. How do you book your guests? What do you read? Who writes your questions for you? How do you know how long to talk with each guest? How do you know what your commercials are going to be? I would just pound someone endlessly. Relentless was a nickname. And it would be very easy for a father to be like, okay, be quiet. My dad knew that would A, embarrass me, and B, wouldn't help me. So he developed this method where he would tap his watch. And that meant it was time for me to be quiet. And then in Born Lucky, we take you through, yes, I was quiet, but nobody knew why I suddenly stopped talking. I did. But this was a message from my dad to be quiet, but also to bookmark that moment. And then he and I would post game, almost like watching game film in a football game of, okay, so when Mr. Hewitt was talking about what his kids were doing now in their lives and his grandkids, why did you want to talk about the government shutdown? I don't know, Dad. I thought it was interesting. Well, yeah, but what do you think Mr. Hewitt was thinking at that moment? And that was the sort of minute by minute, second by second teaching of the social construct, human interaction, the human condition that Dad did with me for years. And sometimes, I mean, it was 15 years or 16 years that sort of this all lasted. And look, and I'll happy to go further, but it's still a work in progress for me. This is still a daily, maybe not hourly, but certainly daily discipline that I have to go through.
But Leland, what amazes me, I've known you for a few years. I've been with you in studio. We've talked on the air before. I had no idea. Zero idea you were on the spectrum, and I usually have a pretty good antenna about that. Zero idea, but you definitely are. And the IQ tests don't lie. The first one you took, there's a 70-point spread between verbal ability and spatial ability, meaning you're the most uncoordinated kid in the world, and you're very, very smart. And it got worse. 8 years later, it had gone up like 72 points. And so your poor parents, there are lots of heroes in this book. Your mom and dad are hero number 1 and 2. Liberty, your sister, PhD from MIT. You talked about the blowback she got at school.
Sure.
I hadn't thought about the siblings of kids with intellectual disabilities. And I want to distinguish physical disabilities. We're not talking about cerebral palsy. We're talking about intellectual disabilities on the spectrum. But your dad's afterwards, people are going to stand in bookstores and read it, right? They're going to go to page 242 and read his 4 bits of advice for the parents of children with intellectual disabilities. And that's all they need to they'll buy the book then. But did you have to get permission from him to write this? Because it really is candid.
It's such a great question, Hugh. And I think you really have to go back to that moment that I was diagnosed, which is they're in one of those little medical office buildings, waiting rooms. My parents and I, they've been told they needed to get Lucky evaluated. And so in Born Lucky, we take you into that room, right? And the woman brings me back after 2 hours of evaluation and says to my parents, we really don't understand what's going on inside his head. He obviously has horrible behavioral issues and social issues with his own, friends his own age, as you pointed out. I had the biggest spread in the IQ testing that they had ever seen, from intellectually retarded on one spectrum to sort of genius on the others, huge learning disabilities. And my dad goes, okay, what do we do? And she goes, nah, I don't know. There's not much. And he goes, is there anything we can do? And she goes, generally not. So he felt completely hopeless. And you're right that he doesn't like being called a hero, and he doesn't want that moniker on him. He can identify as whatever he wants, and the readers can decide after they read the book. But in order to write the book, I said to Dad, and we'd never talked about this with anybody, no teachers, no anybody. And I said to my dad, look, this can help a lot of people. It can give a lot of parents hope. So we're going to write the book. It's going to be as raw and as candid as it can possibly be. And I'm going to interview you, and you have to be totally honest with me. But if, when I turn in the manuscript, before I turn in the manuscript to HarperCollins, you don't like the manuscript, we'll kill it. And Born Lucky won't exist. He said, all right, so write the book. I give him the manuscript, and he was ready to kill it because he said, this is just too personal. We've never told anyone about you having autism. No one, no teachers, no therapists, no principals, nothing. And you're going to put all of this out there, your darkest, most awful moments. You never had therapy. Now you're going through therapy on national television. I said, I understand. Let me ask you a question, Dad. I said, if rather than that therapist, psychologist at 5 years old, when she diagnosed me, had said, there is some things you can do. I want you to read this book, Born Lucky. What would you have done?
Bingo.
And he thought about it for a minute, and he said, I would have read it every single day.
I'm coming right back with Leland Vittert in hour 3, and again tomorrow, but we'll post the entire interview over at my YouTube channel, and it will get sent around to everyone because everyone's going to read this book. I know, because Ron Fournier had the same thing when he wrote Love That Boy. Government's still shut down. Senator John Cornyn, Senator Dan Sullivan will be along shortly. But before we turn to our domestic woes, I want to welcome back Philip Balboni, editor-in-chief and founder of the Global Post, which is the largest daily newsletter devoted to global news. Read it every day, and you'll know what's going on in the world. Today's lead story, Philip Balboni, good to see you, is about Syria. And that could not be better timed because David Horowitz, who is your counterpart at the Times of Israel, just got back from Syria with a group of 9 Jews, maybe the first 9 Jews to go to Syria in 50 years. And al-Shara, their new leader, or the guy in Damascus, I don't know how much of the country leads, was in the United Nations last week. And you're writing about it today because they're having sort of elections. I read it. Will you explain it to people?
Sure. Yes, it's an election, but not for everybody. So they're electing what they're calling a People's Assembly, about 300 people. They're elected kind of in the same way we do the Electoral College here, so not directly. The country is not ready for full elections. There are areas of the country that are still not secure, that are under the control of the government, like the Kurdish areas in the northeast, the Druze areas down near Israel. There's been deaths in conflict. So this is a step. I would say Syria is beginning to arise from the ashes of one of the most brutal, horrible civil wars in modern times. 600,000.
Now, Philip, you mentioned the Alawites have had gunfights with al-Shara's people. Christians are being persecuted. Druze are being persecuted. The Kurds are shooting at the al-Shara people. So what percentage of the country does al-Shara really control?
Well, I mean, in terms of square miles, I would say it's got to be 80%. In terms of population, I'm not sure that I could state it. I don't know if anybody even knows how many people are left in Syria. Here's an important point for your listeners and viewers. 5 to 6 million Syrians fled the conflict between its beginnings in 2011 and the time that the worst of the war was kind of over. And, those people went to surrounding countries like Turkey, Jordan, and Lebanon, but more than 1 million of them went to Europe. And that laid the seeds of the migration crisis, the political challenges that Europe faces still today. That really began with the Syrian civil war.
Does that expatriate community want to go back, Philip, in terms of repatriation to Syria, or are they happy to stay where they are, primarily in Germany and the Nordic countries with a large swath in France and England as well?
Exactly. They're starting to go back. I think many people understandably are waiting to see if Mr. al-Shara, who your viewers and listeners may remember, is a designated terrorist. He fought against U.S. forces in Iraq after our invasion in 2003. He was imprisoned by the United States for multiple years. He is also a former member of al-Qaeda, but he did renounce al-Qaeda in 2016. But this is a man who, for sure, has blood on his hands. But he's transforming himself. He's getting a lot of Western support. President Trump has met him. There you have it right there. And so I guess we should say we wish him well. Hugh, if you permit me one personal note, Global Post correspondent Jim Foley, and many of your viewers will
Yep.
remember this, was kidnapped in Syria in the early years of the Civil War in November of 2012. He was assassinated by the Islamic State in August of 2014. And Jim was an incredibly brave, dedicated young journalist, and he will always, be remembered for his sacrifice.
Jim Foley, we won't forget that. A lot of people tried to cover Syria. It became impossible because you never really knew who was going to kill you the next day, and people finally had to leave. I want to make sure I mention, Philip, you quote Chatham House as saying, quote, Syria's legislative reboot is more than an administrative milestone. It is a test of the transitional government's willingness to embrace pluralism and institutional reform. Now, Chatham House is the United Kingdom's think tank. It's the number one think tank about this stuff in the world. So if they're willing to give them a chance, I guess I am. But what do you think the Israelis are going to say about this?
I think the Israelis are going to welcome the opportunity to have an agreement worked out with Syria for the border. I don't think Israel is going to leave the border, not for probably a very long time. But if they can work out kind of territoriality and non-conflict, I think it's good. It's good for Israel. It's good for Syria. And so far, al-Shara has shown, shall we say, restraint. I mean, you may remember that Israel bombed all kinds of ex-Bashar al-Assad, the former president, chemical weapons, munitions of all kinds, stuff that Hezbollah had stockpiled there, Iran. Israel bombed all of that. And there was no response from Syria.
At least 200 different sorties. The Syrian officials say 1,000, but who knows? People don't know how to count. I want to recommend everyone go to globalpost.com, and here's my monthly commercial. Philip is not a sponsor, but I'm very big about young people knowing about the world. It is absolutely free to teachers and students. You just have to go to globalpost.com. Where do they find that part on the toolbar, Philip?
It is right there. It says Global Education. And
Global Education Initiative.
You can't miss it. And also, it's high school and college students and their teachers and homeschool students. I always give a shout out to you for turning me on to the importance of homeschool. We have a lot of homeschool students who are getting Global Post for free. And
it's very important for our next generation to know the world, and they will learn it from globalpost.com. Thank you, Philip Balboni. Talk to you next month about another interesting thing. Since I was talking about Israel, let me take this moment to tell you about one of our sponsors, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. 1 week from today, we're going to mark the second anniversary of the horrific October 7th massacre. Starting today, I'm asking for your help to support the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews in their critically important work. IFCJ President Yael Eckstein talked about her organization's mission on the ground in Israel.
The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is the largest philanthropic organization in Israel. We both provide ongoing support of food aid, and we distribute over 3 million meals out of soup kitchens across Israel every single year. But we are also agile. We are the first ones on the ground when a rocket strikes. We're there. We're providing the bulletproof vests and helmets. These are saving lives. And praise God, we are his servants to be able to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, shelter the poor, and to be there just as the scriptures say, Nachamu, Nachamu ami, comfort my people, especially during times like this.
On this eve of Yom Kippur, please be generous. Go to ifcj.com. Your donation today at ifcj.com, or go to hughhewitt.com and find the banner at the top over at hughhewitt.com. Thank you for supporting the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Market Check brought to you by andrewandtodd.com. andrewandtodd.com are mortgage bankers. They lend you money. They're with Sierra Pacific Mortgage, our sponsor. You call them at 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. I'll give you the update on mortgage costs in just a second. At this hour, about 30 minutes before the close, it's green everywhere. Dow's up about 0.2, S&P up 0.4, NASDAQ about 0.5%. The good news is in mortgage interest rates. which have taken a small step lower today. According to Zillow, the average 30-year fixed mortgage fell 1 basis point to 6.35%. The 15-year rate, again according to Zillow, dropped 8 basis points to 5.61%. Now that's the kind of spread you got to look at. And that's why you need to talk to andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172. When you talk to Andrew Del Rey or Todd Avakian, and I've known Andrew for more than 20 years, we're in a Bible study, sorta. I missed it again today, work. And Todd Avakian, friend for half as long, they are fabulous guys, and they are terrific mortgage lenders, and they will walk you every step of the way through. So I noted the difference between the 30-year, Zillow says right now, on average around the United States. It's not your rate. Your rate depends on how much you need to borrow and where you live and what your credit score is. The 15-year rate is at 5.61. The 30-year rate is at 6.35 on average across the United States. All right, it's not a guarantee to you about those rates, but that's it on average. Well, that's a pretty significant, that's more than a half point. So you need someone to walk you through the advantages of a 15-year mortgage versus a 30-year mortgage, and you need someone who won't try and upsell you for points or for commission. You can trust andrewandtodd.com. They did my loan when I moved back to the Beltway. They did Dwayne's loan in California. They've done loans for all sorts of people in Salem media. And most importantly, they've done loans for thousands and thousands of you, my listeners, my audience on the Salem News Channel. They know that you're out there and that you want good advice. And a number of you have told me over the years, and they've been sponsoring for more than a dozen years, that they told you you don't want to do it right now. You don't want to refi. Now, you may want to refinance because interest rates have dropped, and you may find that consolidating all your debt, paying off your cars, paying off your student loans, makes more sense to roll it into your house, even if you're going to step up from the mortgage that you've got at 4%. It's all numbered. It's just math. Guess what? I'm not good at math, but Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian are great at math. So give them a call, 888-888-1172. Vice President Vance talked about the shutdown today, cut number 1.
We want to do everything that we can to help the American people, but when the Democrats shut down the government, we have to actually do a little triage to make sure the most critical and most essential services are provided. The government does a lot of things. Of course, Republicans think that the federal government probably does too much, but there are a lot of critical things the federal government does that absolutely all of us would agree need to do. Our troops need to get paid. Our air traffic controllers need to make sure that people are flying safely and on time. We need low-income people to be able to access the food services that are provided by the federal government. There are critical things that need to be saved. We're going to do everything that we can over the coming weeks, if the shutdown lasts that long, to ensure that people get the essential services that they need, despite the fact that Chuck Schumer has shut down the federal government. It's not going to be perfect because we are in a government shutdown. We are going to have to lay some people off if the shutdown continues. We don't like that. We don't necessarily want to do it, but we're going to do what we have to keep the American people's essential services continuing to.
Key point, Chuck Schumer shut down the government. Now, it's already beginning to crack on the Democratic side. They lost 3 members of their caucus last night, including Senator Angus King, who's an independent caucus with the Democrats. So the vote was 55 to 45. The other 5 were going to come over. I don't know when they're going to do it, but Democrats are getting hammered, as they should be, because it's an absolutely silly shutdown. It's a Seinfeld shutdown. It's a shutdown about nothing over nothing. It's the Schumer shutdown. More coming up from Senators Cornyn and Sullivan as we go. Let me, however, take my relief factor. Why? Because I didn't go anywhere today. I didn't do anything. I had a long conversation with Leland Vittert. I went up and downstairs. I got ready. I had to get to the studio. But I do take my relief factor every single day. And it just takes a little bit of water and the 4 pills. And I do it every day on the air. And I do it on the air so that you can see me do it and you can hear me do it if you're listening in your car, at home, or on the podcast, because I really do believe that you will feel better every day that you take Relief Factor, and I've been taking it for more than a decade. It's the only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years. It's the only one I've taken for the last 12 years, and I'm not going to take any other supplements. And a lot of people have offered me a lot of money over the years to do endorsements for other supplements, and I'm sure they're fine. People might like them. I just don't need them. I exercise a lot, and I do need Relief Factor. So call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. or head over to their website, get their starter pack, excuse me, at $19.95, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Vice President Vance took to the podium today to talk about the shutdown, cut number 2.
About illegal alien benefits. Look, the text is very clear, and I even saw, I think it was George Stephanopoulos in an interview with Mike Johnson, did a fact check that was totally rooted in baseless claims. It was basically Democrat propaganda. If you look at the legislative text that they gave us, they tried to turn on 2 separate provisions that would give health care benefits to illegal aliens. Number one, if you're an American citizen, you've been to a hospital in the last few years, you probably noticed that wait times are especially large, and very often somebody who's there in the emergency room waiting is an illegal alien, very often a person who can't even speak English. Why do those people get health care benefits at hospitals paid for by American citizens? The answer is a decision made by the Biden administration that the Trump administration, working with congressional Republicans, undid. We turned off that money spigot to health care funding for illegal aliens. The Democrats, in their legislative text, want to turn it back on. That's one thing. The second thing, Matt, is we all know that there are various ways in which the Biden administration waved away illegal immigration status. They gave parolees, they gave asylum claims to people who weren't really claiming asylum. And when they waved the magic wand of amnesty, giving millions of people legal status, even though they were in the country illegally, they also gave those people access to health care benefits. So what the Democrats are engaging in is a sleight of hand. They're saying, no, no, no. Those weren't illegal aliens who were getting health care benefits, even though everybody, knows they were in the country illegally. It's a lie told by the Democrats that they're not trying to give health care benefits to illegal aliens. It's a lie that is obviously untrue if you just look at the text that they gave us, and all you have to do is understand that this is about who benefits. We think the American people's government ought to benefit American citizens. The Democrats are willing to shut it down to benefit illegal aliens. The contrast couldn't be more clear.
And by the way, I love the fact that the vice president can explain it that succinctly. I got up this morning, there are 9 sources for Beltway News, right? Online, CNN.com and FoxNews.com. 3 old platforms that have transitioned to the new age, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal. And then 4 newsletters, Semaphore, Politico, Axios, and Punchbowl News. I went to all 9 of them, their landing page, on my phone, right, on my phone, because I wanted to see what America saw when they went to look at the news, not doing the deep dive that I normally do before the show. Not one of those platforms explained that it was a Schumer shutdown. Not one. They all said, oh, the government shut down. The vote last night failed. The government's starting to shut down. Not one said Chuck Schumer shuttered the government. And not one explained. And I'm talking about bold headlines. But you know what? It doesn't matter. For the reason the vice president just explained. Everybody knows everything in America because nobody gets their news from the news anymore. They get their news from their neighbors. They get their news from X. A poor few 5% of the country get their news from Blue Sky. Goodness knows what world they're living in. But most of us talk to each other, or we go and we text each other and we see the news. And anyone who's affected by the shutdown will know that it's Chuck Schumer's shutdown. It's going to help win some seats in Virginia. That's why I don't think it's going to last very long. But nobody is buying the shtick that mainstream legacy media is selling you. And every day, every way, I'm going to tell you the truth. Every day that it goes on, the GOP wins another day because of people like Vice President Vance. Cut number 3.
We all understand that Democrats and Republicans have policy disagreements. The Democrats want to do things. Look, when Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries were in here a couple of days ago, they made some suggestions that the president was more than happy to say, yes, let's sit down and talk about how we can solve the health care crisis that we inherited from the Biden administration. But it's one thing to say that we should solve the health care crisis for Americans. It's another thing to say that we're going to shut down the government unless we give the Democrats every single thing that they want, which, as Caroline says, Cortez includes giving billions of dollars of taxpayer funding for health care for illegal migrants. That's ridiculous. You don't have policy disagreements that serve as the basis for a government shutdown. Let's have the conversation about how to fix American health care, about how to make health care more accessible. As the president showed, he's more than willing to act on behalf of the American people for this very reason. What you don't do is say, unless you do exactly what we want to do as congressional Democrats, we're taking hostage. And the hostage, it turns out, is critical, essential services that the American people need. Caroline talked about some of it. Let me talk about some more. Our troops are not getting paid starting today because of the Chuck Schumer wing of the Democratic Party. We have people who require food assistance, low-income Americans who require food assistance, who will not get it unless we reopen the government, thanks to Chuck Schumer and his wing of the Democratic Party. We have flood insurance as we start hurricane season in the southeastern part of our country. That flood insurance is going to disappear because of Chuck Schumer and the far left of the Democratic Party. We need to reopen the government. Let's fix America's problems. Let's work together to solve them. But let's reopen the government before we have our negotiation about health care policy. That's what the American
people... You know, what I marvel at, I've been in this business for 35 years. I can do stand-up for an hour. The vice president has not been in this business for 35 years. He's been in it for 4 and maybe 3. 2 years as a senator, 1 year on the stump, 4 years he's been doing this. He is a Gatling gun of information. He is absolutely the spooky. Remember the AC-130 in Afghanistan? He just rains down lead on misinformation. And Chuck Schumer doesn't stand a chance. AOC doesn't stand a chance. None of them stand a chance. It's like they found this secret weapon that they can put up there at the front of the press room in the White House. With every White House bureau, got to report something tonight. They've got acres of J.D. Vance. Not a fair fight. Democrats are getting shredded. I hope they just stay out in the open and take more lead in terms of talking points. Don't want any violence, of course. You know, people over at Media Matters are going to clip that. Let me talk to you about one thing that Republicans might want. They might want permitting reform. I got a sponsor here, American Exploration and Production Council, axpc.org, axpc.org. They're all about getting more energy out of the ground in America, off of the coast of America. They're about more platforms, more production, more pipelines. And we do that with permit reform. And permit reform, it's all laid out at axpc.org, axpc.org, axpc.org. And you know what? When it comes down to the appropriations negotiation in regular order, Democrats want A, B, and C. Republicans are going to want permit reform because we know we need energy because energy is freedom and it means a growing economy. So get on board with permit reform, Democrats. Open up the government and go find the agenda at axpc.org, a great sponsor and a great set of ideas. The Guardians just scored. They're ahead 2-1. They're still at bat. Brian Rocchio went yard, and I'm trying just to do my job. Vice President Vance, cut number 4.
So let me make one final point. I think a lot of Americans are asking themselves, why did this happen? Why did the Democrats shut down the government despite, as Caroline said, voting on the exact same piece of legislation 6 months ago? And there are a lot of different spins that we can put on it, a lot of different answers that we could give, all of them true. One answer I already gave is that they want to give health care benefits to illegal aliens. That is true. They gave us legislative text that would have undone us cutting off health care benefits for illegal aliens. That's one of the things that they asked for. But the reality here, and let's be honest about the politics, is that Chuck Schumer is terrified she's going to get a primary challenge from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The reason why the American people's government is shut down is because Chuck Schumer is listening to the far left radicals in his own party because he's terrified of a primary challenge. So I'd invite Chuck Schumer to join the moderate Democrats and 52 Senate Republicans, do the right thing, open up the people's government, and then let's fix health care policy for the American people.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, and thank you, Daniel Schneeman and Stephen Kwan. Kwan doubled. Schneeman brought him home. It's now 3-1. We need 3 outs out of Hunter Gaddis or Kate Smith. I don't know which one's on the mound. I'm trying to do my job here. Last cut of the Vice President, cut number 5.
So the president's been posting some images of Leader Jeffries and Senator Schumer
I saw.
recently. You've said that you're interested in good faith negotiations with these leaders, but what message does that send? Is it helpful to post pictures of Leader Jeffries in a sombrero if you're trying to have good faith talks with him?
Oh, I think it's funny. The president's joking, and we're having a good time. You can negotiate in good faith while also poking a little bit of fun at some of the absurdities of the Democrats' positions, and even, poking some fun at the absurdity of the Democrats themselves. I mean, I'll tell Hakeem Jeffries right now, I make this solemn promise to you that if you help us reopen the government, the sombrero memes will stop. And I've talked to the President of the United States about that.
When you get an involuntary laugh out of the press corps, that's when you scored. It's still 3-1. It's Cade Smith. We need 3 outs out of Cade Smith, and I'm a happy man for the night. Let me tell you about Consumer Cellular. They're a great sponsor of this program, and they will save you money if you call them at 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. Remember my code, Hugh25. You'll save $5 off of each invoice for the first 5 months when you switch to Consumer Cellular. More importantly, you'll probably save a lot of money because you're probably buying too much data. Get your phone bill out before you call Consumer Cellular. You can also go to consumercellular.com/Hugh, consumercellular.com/Hugh, and find out all the great rate plans that they've got. But I think you ought to call 1-800-411-4454. Tell them you're calling for code Hugh25, and then walk through how much data you're using and what you're paying. Get your phone bill out and find, because I'm going to guarantee you, especially if you're 50 years and older, you'll get 2 unlimited lines of unlimited data for $60 a month. Keep your number, keep your data, keep your phone. Just save a lot of money with consumercellular.com/Hugh or by calling 1-800-411-4454. Guards ball. By the time I come back, I hope they've got one in the winds. I pride myself on bringing you breaking news, but rarely do I get a United States Senator fresh from the floor. Senator John Cornyn, senior senator from Texas, joins us. Senator Cornyn, thank you. I know things are busy, but we got a picture of you trying to talk some sense into your Democratic colleagues there. What were you telling them?
Well, I told them that no negotiations while they shut down the government.
Good message.
What they claim is they want to do is they want to negotiate or actually hold hostage the floor and the government to their ability to extend enhanced premium support for Obamacare subsidies. And I told them, we're not going to talk about it as long as the government shut down. So that's job number one.
Now, Senator, last night, 3 members of their caucus crossed over.
No.
Senator King is an independent and 2 Democrats. That's not really a sign of strength for Senator Schumer, is it?
No, I agree. And we'll see how long it lasts. Hugh, I've always thought the Democrats, being the party of government, would never agree to a shutdown. But I think they've become so frustrated and the resistance to President Trump so strong that they're willing to do things that they never would have considered before, as to demonstrate their willingness to fight to their own political base. And of course, Senator Schumer is fighting for his political survival among an increasingly progressive and left-leaning base of the Democratic Party.
Well, is anyone fooled? I really ask this earnestly because I've told the audience, my audience, it's a Schumer shutdown for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's because he's afraid of AOC. Does anyone in D.C. not know that? I mean, are they delusional?
Yeah, I think somewhat delusional. I mean, some of them have convinced themselves that this is all about insurance premiums for health care. And of course, we need to pay attention to that. Access to health care is important. But on top of the massive subsidies to insurance companies that the Obamacare bill provided about 10 years ago during COVID, Joe Biden used that emergency to basically blow the lid off the amount of money that is being spent on health care and enriching insurance companies and really not helping people who need it the most. So there's a time and place for us to have that discussion. We need to do it before the end of the year, but this is not the time nor the place during the Schumer shutdown.
Now, Senator, you've been there long enough. You know that there's always a party that loses in a shutdown. Typically, it's Republicans. Yeah. I went to all 9 of the major outlets this morning in the Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, CNN.com, FoxNews.com, Punchbowl, Politico, Semaphore, and Axios. Not one of them said Schumer shutdown. Not one said Schumer shutdown. And everybody knows it's a Schumer shutdown, right? And it sticks. It's like tattooed on the poor guy. I'm beginning to feel sorry for him. You've known him a long time. He's not dumb. What's he think he gets out of this?
Well, I think it's his political survival. You remember last time that he agreed to a continuing resolution, which unfortunately has become a routine practice around here in lieu of the regular appropriations process. Last time he agreed to it, he got excoriated by the left and for actually doing the responsible thing at the time. So he's not going to make that mistake again because he knows their base that's completely frustrated and got Trump derangement syndrome. They want to see some fight, and this is how they fight, even albeit in what I view as a losing battle. And who really loses is the 320 million or so Americans who for whom they look at their government and they say these folks don't know how to run a two-car funeral. So it's really deplorable.
I wouldn't even give him the hearse. Now, Senator, there's no incentive. Just correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there's any incentive for any Republican at any level to negotiate with the Democrats on anything during a shutdown because they're going to lose ground every day. Have I got that right?
Yeah, and your point earlier I meant to comment on is the press is, of course, what the Democrats depend on, is a selective reporting to the of the press here on Capitol Hill, suggesting it's got to be the Republicans' fault. But what they failed to mention is it's the Democrats who are preventing us from passing a clean continuing resolution that's only good for 9 weeks till November the 20th, at which time hopefully we'll get back into more of a regular appropriations process. So it's surreal, but that's
well, Senator. I wrote already. I
operate.
filed a column for Fox News in the morning, and it's going to make the argument that the blue bubble is very bad for Democrats because they don't know how much they don't know. They read the Beltway press, they talk to each other, they go to New York, they fly to LA to raise money, but they don't know what the country knows. I think, tell me, for example, in Texas, is anyone fooled by this? I mean, you and Senator Cruz make the rounds. You get out, you talk to people. Is anyone in Texas fooled that this is other than a Schumer shutdown?
Nobody. I think Schumer's proud of it. And this is kind of how he's trying to fight for his political survival, as we were discussing. But I don't think anybody's fooled. And I agree that we should not negotiate as long as the shutdown continues. And I know President Trump is there. I know the Speaker of the House of Representatives is there, and certainly Majority Leader Thune. So that's where we are until they're willing to talk some sense.
Now, you and Leader Thune are tied for least likely to use the line from The Godfather, "Here's my offer, nothing." But that's where I just want to put a line under it. That is the GOP position, House, Senate, and President, correct? Here's our offer,
correct.
Nothing.
That's correct. And Senator Thune's been great, I think, about the way he's handled this. This is maybe one of the first big trials he's had as majority leader. But obviously, we had a great record of success working with the president with the Working Families Tax Cut Act and other successes. And we are now confirming literally 100 more of the president's nominees that have been bottlenecked as a result of this complete resistance to anything and everything having to do with Donald Trump. So we're making good progress, but this is a bump in the road.
Last question, Senator. During this shutdown of the federal government, will the Senate stay in session and keep confirming nominees? Because that's a win-win for look, I don't want people not to get paid, especially I got a son-in-law in the military. I don't want him not to get paid, but that's about 2 weeks off. They'll fold before then, I think. But in the meantime, will you keep doing the nominees?
We will. And we just voted again here just a few minutes ago on the continuing resolution and the Democratic alternative, so to speak. And we'll do that again at the end of the Yom Kippur holiday ending tomorrow night. We'll do that on Friday. And then we'll be back again Monday, if not before, doing it again, giving Democrats another shot at it. But we got 3 of them peeled off, and all we need is a few more to get to that magic number.
Thank you, Senator Cornyn. Do not blink. I'm sure all your colleagues are saying the same thing. Just do not blink, because they're in a box canyon, and Chuck Schumer is going to go down in history as the poor guy's in an unwinnable situation with AOC over there on his left wing, but he ought to just gird up and fight her, not try and this idiots. I've never seen anything this dumb. In your career on the court, when you were the Texas Supreme Court Justice or in the Senate, have you ever seen anything this dumb?
No, and what Schumer himself called it was idiocy back when he was complaining about Republicans. And so I guess what he would have to say is that what he's doing is idiocy. I would concur with that, but it makes no sense except for Chuck Schumer to try to save his political skin.
Well, that's not, he's going to be 78 years old when he runs again. And if AOC takes him on, she's going to win. So he might as well lose with some dignity. Senator John Cornyn, always good to see you, Senator. Thank you for helping to carry the message. I appreciate it greatly. John Cornyn, great man from Texas, senior senator from the Lone Star State. We're on in Houston and Dallas and all over Texas. And you folks know you've got a great pair of senators, and they will not blink. I don't think any Republican going to blink on this. And I'm going to try and get Leader Thune on tomorrow. I'm going to get, I hope, Chairwoman Collins, who chairs the Appropriations Committee, on. I think Senator Sullivan is coming up next hour as well. There's just no room to compromise with stupidity. We're not going to give $1 trillion right now. I do want to remind you about Relief Factor. I took it in hour number 1. I remind you in every hour of every day, so 3 times a day, 15 times a week. And I do that for the Steelers fans. No, I'm kidding. I do that for everyone. I repeat myself. I take it every day because it works every day, and it'll work for you if you give it a try. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. And the reason you call that number is because you have a minor ache and pain that is bothering you right now. Your neck, your back, your knees, something in your long commute is bothering you right now. If it bothers you every day, will you at least try the 3-week starter pack, $19.95, less than $1 a day? You can get it by calling 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, or going to their website and finding the starter pack, $19.95, 3-week supply. Take 3 a day for the first week, 2 a day for the second week, and then you're on the 1 a day for as long as you want to feel good at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Mood swing shift. Guardians are ahead 6-1 over the Tigers, but the Tigers have the bases loaded with 2 out. John Campbell, big Guardians fan, joins us now, former congressman extraordinaire. I have real questions about the shutdown, but first, feel free to cheer on the Guardians, Congressman.
I don't even know what the Guardians are. There's the Cleveland Indians. I know that. And because I am a conservative, Hugh, I do not use woke language. So I refuse to bend to the language of the woke, which is what they want us to do, but we're not going to do it.
The game is over, John, and the Guardians won 6-1. You know what? I thought you believed in property rights. I thought you believed in property rights. The Dolans changed the name. They own the club. I thought you were a Fifth Amendment guy. You want government regulation on naming, huh?
They are woke, and if I had been a Cleveland Indians fan, I would not be one anymore, because it would mean that I have woke owners, and I don't want to support a team with a bunch of woke owners. So I don't.
Your Angels or your Diamondbacks are both out of it. The Guardians won. Let me ask you my serious question. Game 3 tomorrow, yes. America. Start praying for the Guardians. Here's the question. Does anybody really get hurt in a shutdown? Because the back pay is always paid. They usually get it fixed before the military misses a paycheck, because that would make a lot of people upset. Does anyone really get hurt?
In the past, no. Because as you've said, normally what they do is just suspend things. And people don't have to go to work, but when they do get called back to work, they get paid for the period that they were not working because of the shutdown. So in the past, in the end, and we even had, I was trying to add up how many shutdowns I was involved in. It had to be 6 or 7 or something like that. But anyway, I think one of them was 30 days before we caved, and we did cave back in whatever year that was to Obama. But no, in the end, nobody's hurt.
But this is different. This has got Russ Vogt, John Campbell's protege. Tell us about Russ Vogt.
That is exactly the reason this is different. Russ Vogt was when I was the financial head, I don't even remember what my title was, with the Republican Study Committee. Russ Vought was my staffer on the Republican Study Committee that worked on that, and he ended up marrying a girl in my office. They are now unfortunately divorced, but Mary Vought, I follow her on Twitter. She's now at the Heritage Foundation and is very much involved still in politics. But Mary and Russ met in my office, and so I know them both very well. And Russ
So is he going to make him pay?
Yes, he is, because he is, first of all, he's very, very smart, very, very smart. And he will know what to do and how to do this. The other thing is, frankly, and this is, I don't mean this in a bad way, I mean in a good way, he is ruthless. When he has something he believes in and something, a cause he wants to advance, he is ruthless about advancing that cause. And so there will be no issues for him whatsoever if he can find ways to terminate the Department of Education through this, or terminate a bunch of people at the EPA, or take some of those people that are currently on furlough and permanently terminate them, and basically take a lot of what was DOGE and implement that, because this shutdown gives him an avenue, a legal avenue under which he can. Now, understand, I don't know if that avenue exists, but whatever avenues are out there, he has found them. He knows what they are, and he is going to put them in place. And so
Yeah, we're
that
going to
is
see
a
the
big
vote playbook.
difference.
It's like the Browns going to play the Vikings. Nobody knows the Browns are going to do, because they're going to put in Dylan Gabriel, the rookie from Oregon. Nobody knows how he's going to play, whether he's going to go good or bad. Nobody knows what the vote playbook is, and it's going to be interesting. Now, let me ask you, you're consuming media in the desert. I'm consuming media in the Beltway. The Beltway media, all 9 sources, and I ran through them earlier, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, FoxNews.com, CNN.com, Politico, Punchbowl, Axios, and Semaphore. Not one of them had a headline, Schumer shuts down the government. My argument is, it doesn't matter. Everybody knows Schumer shut down the government. Do you agree with me, or do you think the Democrats are winning a media war?
Oh, I don't think they're winning the media war, but neither do I think everyone knows it's a Schumer shutdown. I'm sure that the people who consume the New York Times and the Atlantic and CNN and whatever believe it's a Trump shutdown. And so that's where they are at. But the other thing about this, the shutdowns I've been through, is, the president has a whole lot of leeway. And we talked about what Russ Vought might do. But when the shutdowns I was involved with, Obama was president, and he had a lot of leeway. And so he shut down things that Republicans cared about, like all the parks. One of my favorite things, as an example of what Obama did during one of these shutdowns, to show you how much flexibility, if you will, that the president has to inflict pain on those he wishes to inflict pain on, so they will lean on the other party to stop the shutdown. Obama, the George Washington Parkway in Alexandria, Virginia. Right, nice little parkway, right? You can ride your bike, walk, run, whatever, right along the Potomac, right?
Yep. I often trundle on it.
Yeah, and you can pull in and park. There's little parking spaces, and it's not staffed. There's nobody there, but it's federal. It's owned by the federal government. During one of those shutdowns, Obama closed it, and the only way to close it was to staff it. Now, it was unstaffed. So in theory, in the shutdown, you're supposed to cut people. He added people to go and cone it off, so you couldn't park, you couldn't run, you couldn't ride your bike, and had people patrol it to kick you out if you did. So he actually added cost, but what he was doing is he wanted to make Republicans hurt. He wanted people to complain to Republicans and say, hey, you got to vote to stop this shutdown. So imagine what all those federal workers are going to do to their Democratic friends and colleagues and so forth, or some of the NGOs or leftist organizations. I see Russ Vought already tweeted that there's some huge amount of money that's supposed to go for some Green New Deal thing that he is suspending right now. Well, a lot of the companies and industries that were getting those are going to call their Democratic congressman and say, hey, what are you doing? You're costing me money.
The OMB is in the old executive office building and the new executive office building. And the new executive office building is up 17th Street, and the old executive office. We ought to go there. Someone ought to go there at 1 o'clock in the morning. The lights are going to be on all night long at OMB, looking for things to cut. And that's wonderful.
They absolutely
Now,
will, and it is wonderful. I agree with you. This is a lose-lose for them, and the only reason they're doing it is they're hard left, as we all know, and because Schumer's worried about AOC and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff. But this is a lose-lose.
See,
for
I
them.
didn't mention that. I did not mention that. You brought it up sua sponte. That is exactly what it is. Schumer is afraid of AOC. That's it. That's the whole deal.
Absolutely, absolutely, he is, and so he's. But it's a lose-lose because if this continues, I do think on balance people understand the Democrats have shut it down. One other thing, and if it goes on, they're going to eliminate a lot of Democratic priority spending, so they lose either way. Well, one of the things I wanted to mention to show that it's the Schumer.
Hey, John,
shutdown.
wait one sec. Stay another segment with him, will you? It'll give me a
Okay,
chance
sure.
to get the box score. I'll be able to tell you who got the winning. I think Kate Smith got the win. I'll be able to figure out who got the other home run besides Brian Rocchio and George Valera. All the important stuff I'll be able to give to you live, and then you'll be able to make your last point to me. So don't go anywhere, America, except over to HughHewitt.com. The International Fellowship of Christian and Jews needs your help. $25, $50, $100 as we approach the second anniversary of 10/7. The ICFJ does an extraordinary amount of good in the state of Israel, and you can help them do it at HughHewitt.com. The International Fellowship of Christian and Jews. The banner is at the top of HughHewitt.com. John Campbell stayed over because he wanted to know who hit the Guardians' home runs today. Oh, that's pretty low. That's very low. Where did you find that?
What do you mean? Where did I
For the
find
benefit
that?
of
It's
our
in my
listeners,
closet. It's in my
John
closet.
Campbell is wearing a Nationals championship.
No.
We'll get one of those soon
No,
for the Guardians.
not Nationals. No. It's an Arizona Diamondbacks National League Champions shirt.
Oh, that
from
was I
2023.
see the A now. You have to stand up.
Yeah,
John's very.
yeah.
You have to jump up and down. Okay, I got it. We'll get one of those for the Guardians soon.
Yeah,
John,
right.
tell me what the point was you wanted to make about the shutdowns.
Point I wanted to make was shutdowns happen generally, and this time as well, because Republicans want to cut spending and Democrats want to increase spending. What's the compromise? What's the solution? Keep it where it is. That's a clean CR. That's what a clean CR is. In all the shutdowns I was involved with, the solution, the agreement at the end, the compromise was a clean CR, because Republicans don't get cuts. Democrats don't get spending increases. So the Republicans started today. I mean, basically, and offered, okay, here's what's always been the solution. Here's always been the compromise, clean CR. We don't get what we want. You don't get what you want. We compromise. It's in the middle, and they turned that down. So that's why this is the Schumer shutdown, because this has always been the answer. It's always been the solution to the problem. And all the time I was there, when you put a clean CR on the floor, every Democrat voted for it. Every Democrat voted for it because their government people kept the government open. You know who didn't vote for it? The most fiscally conservative Republicans. They always voted no. Why did they vote no? Because they didn't want to vote for something that sustained spending. They would only vote for things that cut spending. And a clean CR does not cut spending by 1 penny. And
Which explains why Rand Paul is the only Republican to vote against the clean CR last night. He never votes for a CR. He never. As a matter of principle, he won't vote for a CR.
He won't vote for anything that sustains spending. It has to cut spending. So that's the thing, is that what the offer here from Trump, from the Republicans, from Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune, is what has normally been, okay, we're not going to get what we want, but you're not going to get what you want. This is the middle ground. And the Democrats have turned down the middle ground. So that shows you where they are today. They are so far out of the middle that they can't even see it, it seems, because they're hard left.
I think they've gone
controlling.
Thelma and Louise. And here's a theoretical question, because I really don't know what their pain tolerance is. When you go Thelma and Louise, there's no backing up. Is there any way out for them at this point other than abject failure?
The only way out, and in the old days when parties would get along with each other and there truly was honor amongst thieves, Schumer could sit down with Trump and say, hey, Don, look, I got a problem with my hard left. I got a problem with AOC. You got to cut me some slack. Give me something. and we'll make a deal here. And you got to give me a little something so I can deal with these people. But help me out. And people would do that. I was involved in conversations like that with Democrats and Republicans, where you were.
But John,
you,
although you were a car guy, you were also a real estate guy, and you know what real estate guys are like. I represented them for 35 years. When they've got leverage, they don't give it away.
No, that's
Donald
true.
Trump might help Schumer out, but he's going to get something, isn't he?
Well, I think it's too late for him to help Schumer out, except to get something now. What I'm saying is this is the way it would have happened before, and it's not anymore. So how do they get out of this? Schumer could say, I still don't want this. This is a bad idea. We need to keep this shutdown going. We need to get the stuff we want, illegal in healthcare, all that stuff. We need to do it, blah, 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 blah. But they release 4 or 5 Democrats to vote the other way. That's the final, I think, the way they get out of it. That Schumer saves face with his base to some degree, but they release some Democratic senators who are happy to vote for it.
They got Shaheen is reasonable. They got Angus King already. They got the Nevada lady who just got one. I keep thinking Ocasio-Cortez because she got 2 last names as well, but it's not. There aren't, like John Ossoff can't vote for this in Georgia, right? No one who's up for re-election can vote for this.
Well, no, I would think somebody who's up for re-election should vote for it. Now, you're saying they can't vote for it because they'll be primaried. And I suppose that's possible, but there's some endangered Democrats we know.
I think Ossoff loses money if he votes for this. And Ossoff is the most endangered Democrat.
Right, he is.
We will continue.
Well,
the Guardians will move on past the Tigers, and you'll be back next week when we're playing somebody somewhere else, and you'll have to put your sweater, your very old sweater that's about the past, and we look forward here at the Hugh Hewitt Show. It's moth-eaten. The Diamondbacks haven't been in the playoffs. What is that, 30 years old? Selena Zito is our regular guest. Selena, welcome. I want to ask you, Selena, do you know any children or friends who had children with intellectual disabilities, meaning autism or somewhere on the spectrum?
Not really, no.
Well, when you read Leland Bittert's book,
so, yeah.
Okay, you get when people are our age, they didn't really have a name for spectrum disorders and intellectual disabilities like autism or Asperger's. They didn't have the diagnosis. But when you read Leland Bittert's new book, and you love good books, you write good books like Butler that are moving. Do you know Leland Bittert from News Nation?
I've been on a show a couple times, yeah.
Well, his autobiography about he and his dad. Leland has autism. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
It's one of the most impactful books I've read in years. It's like Butler. It's like your first book. And, I tend not to go overboard on books, but I think it's going to change the way people view kids with intellectual disabilities who are on the spectrum somewhere. And I have some people in mind that I can't wait to give it to their parents because they know they're dealing with it. You haven't covered that? I'm kind of surprised.
No, I feel like I've covered everything else, but it's not really been something that that has been something that I've covered. But I've often wondered, as the autism and Asperger's, those diagnoses have started to come out and become part of the mainstream conversation when my kids were going into college, right? And I often, and as people talked about it, and I've read stories about it, I almost believe that more people are on some sort of spectrum than they aren't.
Leland definitely was, and he's got the stories and the stats, or he still is. He has the stories and the stats to prove it. Let me move on to your column about John Fetterman. One of 3 Democrats, I include Angus King and the senator from Nevada, are the 3 who voted to keep the government open last night. You talked to him about it. What did he have to say?
Well, he just thinks this drama, right? this inability to do the right thing within his party is just absolutely ridiculous and nonsensical. And he doesn't understand. This is a guy who I would categorize as the old-fashioned blue dog Democrat, which I think has become pretty extinct. And
Yep.
they're a much more pragmatic Democrat. These are the men and women that you and I grew up with in Warren and Western Pennsylvania, right? And their party, the National Party, has pushed them out in terms of having a dominance or a loud voice. But Fetterman is having none of that, and he believes that he has an obligation to talk about it, an obligation to call things out when he thinks they're wrong. And I think that's what continuously makes him much more popular in the state than I think Washington Democrats understand. It's just sort of one of those reasons, once again, that DC does not understand my state.
There is a very small group of people who are 1, Democrat, 2, pro-Israel, and 3, anti-shutdown. I think Angus King and John Fetterman are the only 2 people who check all 3 boxes. And I'm wondering, do you think he'll ever switch parties?
No, I don't think he ever switches party. I think the burning question is, does he run again? Right? Does he do what was that Virginia senator's name that was only in office for 1 term? He defeated George Allen.
James Webb, Senator Webb.
Yeah. He also was a blue dog Democrat, right?
Very much so.
He also had very little patience for the nonsense going on in his party, and that's why he left. He had a short run for president. I thought he would have been extremely interesting. In fact, I thought years ago that populism, the Democrats, had they not gone far left, would have been able to mainstream it with Webb. But I think he just sort of threw his hands up and said, "I'm done with the whole thing."
And he's an author, and he's an artist, and he's a Marine, and he was not having any of it. He's a good friend of my brother-in-law. They went to Annapolis together, so I've known Senator Webb over the years. And for a time, he was Reagan's Secretary of the Navy as well. So he was actually right there in the smack middle of everything. I got to get your reaction to Secretary Hegseth bringing all of the general officers and admirals, because the world is dividing into good on Secretary Hegseth, and boy, that was horrible. I think that's an 80-20 issue, that 80% of America thinks it's just fine, but the blues are very loud. What do you think, Selena?
Well, of course, the blues are loud because they control the legacy media, right? The honest answer is, for years, I covered the military, Afghanistan, Iraq, veterans issues. I have a lot of close ties with military members, both present and now veterans. They applauded this. I think a little known fact is several of them texted me this yesterday, that we have not been, meaning the military, have not been doing the standards. And this one former general said to me, Major General, he said, we it's like a 12-month process to get someone to get in shape. And then if they just get close to it, then they get another year. So basically, they don't ever have to get in shape, and they don't understand. And these men and women are like, why would you not want to be in shape, right? Like, even on that level, why wouldn't you want to be the best of the best of the best? That's
and
what
feel better. I mean, you got to be lethal as well. You got to be able to go out there in the field. I think the message was square on the nose, and I don't care that he was only a major. He went into combat, and I don't think those generals and admirals care. I'll bet you that the vast majority of them were pleased to hear what he had to say. Do you think I'm right or wrong about that?
Oh, no. I talked to someone. They were.
Selena, I always love being confirmation bias at work. I love it when you agree with me. Follow Selena at Zito Selena. Go and read her story about John Fetterman and why he voted to keep the government open when everyone else on the Democratic side, save one, Angus King's an independent, So there was Angus King, the senator from Nevada, and John Fetterman voted against the Schumer shutdown. Generalissimo has provided the transcript of my conversation with Senator Cornyn. Republicans are not going to give an inch. The Democrats have shut down the government. The Schumer shutdown may go on as long as tomorrow, go on for weeks, months, years. It's up to Chuck Schumer. It's up to the Democratic Party. They shut it down. They have to reopen it. And believe me, I've been the Republican on the other side of these, and the people who pull the trigger and shut the government down are the ones who lose, and this time it's the Democrats, and there's no getting around it. I do want to bring to your attention our friends at ALEC, because they're our great sponsors, the American Legislative Exchange Council, alec.org. And I want you to go to richstatespoorstates.com. That's because at richstatespoorstates.com, you can get a free copy of the 50 states ranked by their affordability, their economic growth, their education system, their quality of life. Number one, again this year, is Utah. Number two, again this year, is Florida. The bottom five are, well, you can guess what they are. They include New York and California and Connecticut and other deep blue states. The deep blue senators who have shut down the government are the senators sent by those electorates who've got the biggest problems when it comes to unfunded pension liabilities, to failing schools, to soaring crimes. Go and get the facts from richstatespoorstates.com, and then you will know why the Republicans cannot take another step towards the Democrats. The spending is too high. It has to come down. But right now we're saying, okay, we'll negotiate. Republicans said, let's go into the cloakroom, let's do our deal, let's get the appropriation done in regular order. And Chuck Schumer needs some attention because he's trying to hold off AOC. Not going to work. Here is Vice President Vance. The cut number 5, please, because it's the funniest cut.
So the president's been posting some images of Leader Jeffries and Senator Schumer
I saw.
recently. You've said that you're interested in good faith negotiations with these leaders, but what message does that send? Is it helpful just post pictures of Leader Jeffries in a sombrero if you're trying to have good faith talks with him?
Oh, I think it's funny. The president's joking, and we're having a good time. You can negotiate in good faith while also poking a little bit of fun at some of the absurdities of the Democrats' positions, and even, poking some fun at the absurdity of the Democrats themselves. I mean, I'll tell Hakeem Jeffries right now, I make this solemn promise to you that if you help us reopen the government, the sombrero memes will stop. And I've talked to the President of the United States about that. Now,
Do you know when you get unsolicited laughter, spontaneous chuckles from the most cynical people in the world, the White House press corps, they are the most cynical people in the world. When you get a spontaneous laugh, you've scored. The memes will stop if you reopen the government. Hakeem Jeffries got nothing to do with it. It's all Chuck Schumer. The House passed the continuing resolution to fund the government. The Democrats shot it down, and they're going to have to live with it, and it's going to pile up pretty fast. I remember all too well what happens when the government stays shut for a day, and then exponential political damage to the party that shut it down. And there are Democratic governors races underway right now, and Winsome Sears is going to win in Virginia, and a Democrat might lose in New Jersey because of Chuck Schumer. What a genius. I begin with John Podhoretz, editor-in-chief of Commentary Magazine, host of the Commentary Podcast. J-Pod, thank you for joining me an hour before Yom Kippur gets underway. May you have an easy fast. I'm curious, do you turn off all your electronics during Yom Kippur?
I do.
Do you expect there to be a peace? Do you believe there'll be a peace deal on the other side of this year's fast?
I am very agnostic on this. It seems to me that the administration has gone so all in that they must believe that there is a pony under all of that Ronald Reagan crap.
Joke. Yep.
Just to make clear what I'm talking about, Ronald Reagan famously loved to tell the story about the little kid who was such an optimist that he saw a pile of dung and started digging through it, and his father said, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere." So
Yeah.
the idea that Hamas is ever going to give up seems to me to be the wish taking precedence over the hard truths of the last couple of years, but could happen. I hope
I
it
heard
does.
Dan Senor
It's a good
earlier
deal.
today. He also released a little thing before Yom Kippur saying Trump has never gone this all in before on a Middle East deal. Turkey has to deal with him for 3.5 years. Qatar has to deal with him for 3.5 years. Egypt has to deal with him for 3.5 years. Everybody is putting it on Hamas, but they're still terrorists, right? They're still ideological fanatics. So why do we think they're going to move?
Well, they're also Iranian proxies. They're not Turkish proxies. They're not even Qatari proxies. They're Iranian proxies. So even though Iran has obviously been, humiliated and is on its back foot based on the attacks that Israel and the United States conducted jointly on the nuclear program and various other things that have happened in the last year and a half, including the loss of their proxy in Lebanon and the loss of their control of Syria. If Iran is still sort of the father of Hamas, then Iran doesn't really have any incentive to let this deal go through. But I hope it does, because it's a great, for everything that I stand for, it's the best deal you could possibly want at this moment. And therefore, I do assume that Hamas has very little incentive to agree to it unless it is so devastated by the last couple of weeks and the nature of the assault on Gaza City that it really does actually want to cry uncle and get itself out of the complete disaster that it has walked into.
So that leads me to the big question that I want people to reflect on. 2 years ago, next week, the anniversary of the massacre. In those 2 years, I don't know of anyone in Israel, and I'm not an Israeli, I'm not a Jew, but I try and follow it, who could have led the Jewish state better than Bibi Netanyahu. Now, I know that's going to get me in trouble with a lot of my listeners who loathe the guy, but I'm just standing back saying, this has been well played, Mr. Bond, at every turn. Yoav Gallant thought we should go this way. Other people thought we should go that way. You follow it very closely, and your sister lives there. What do you think of what Netanyahu has pulled off in the last 2 years?
Well, I think the proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating. In other words, if this deal comes through, it will be an unbelievably important legacy moment for him, by which I mean he will have conducted the war, saved the hostages to the extent that that was possible, defeated Hamas, and therefore will erase his response, not will erase, but will have met his obligation to answer for the fact that over the previous 15 years, all of which but 20 months or something, he was prime minister of the country, he allowed Hamas to build up the capability to attack Israel on October 7th, which is what he faces in historical terms, is the reckoning for that. How he has proceeded in the last 2 years, the kind of dancing that he had to do, that Israelis who don't like him and Americans who don't like him and people like that fail to understand, in keeping himself and Israel close to the United States, both during the Biden era, which was a whole set of different challenges, and during the Trump era, which is obviously much friendlier to his interests, but in which we kept seeing indications that Steve Witkoff and Adam Boehler, his negotiator on the hostages, and various other people would have been perfectly willing, had Bibi mishandled it or had the Israelis moved in certain different ways, to undercut him so that they could claim that they had made a fantastic advance. And he managed to hold himself close to Trump and keep himself as a player in this game in a way that shows a kind of psychological mastery that we really haven't seen, and that he, by the way, doesn't really display in Israeli politics, where he is a much, much more divisive figure than you even can imagine that he is, even though he did, in fact, win a majority for his coalition at the end of 2022. People really hate him. I mean, they hate him the way they hated Nixon. They hate him the way they hate Trump. They believe that he is evil and terrible and monstrous in every way. And a lot of people, even in his own coalition, find him untrustworthy and duplicitous and sneaky and terrible. But given the hand that he has had to play, particularly with the United States and the complexities thereof, it's a masterly piece of statecraft that he has been involved.
It is. It's just amazing. Now, I got one more question for you before you begin your Yom Kippur observation, John. You and I are of the same generation, so is Abe. Christine is younger, Matt and Seth younger still. So I listen to the commentary podcast, but the people that the Israelis are losing are young people throughout the West. And it seems to me that the diaspora is in more danger now than Israel was on 10/8, that it's completely flipped. What is to be done about that? Who's going to speak up for Jews in America now?
That's a very good question. I am very alarmed about this, as you know. I'm alarmed also about the signs and portents on the right, which is to say that the kind of podcast right, this very direct marketed audience right that gets its instant responses on social media and through its audiences on its podcasts, seems to be of the opinion that there is gold to be mined from anti-Israel opinion and anti-Semitic opinion, and that this is something that is making them money and getting them clicks and all of that on our side of the ledger. I mean, I basically have written off the other side of the ledger. I didn't know the extent to which it had to be written off or how bad things were going to get. My general feeling is that nothing succeeds like victory, and that despite the fact that 75% of Democrats or whatever say they now are more sympathetic to the Palestinians than to Israel, a perceived victory in the war against Hamas makes Israel a winner, not a loser, makes Israel the victor, not the defeated. And in general in the world, it's better to be the victor than the victim. I don't care if victimization is a hot topic and a hot thing in certain circles. The world deals with winners and victors better than it does with people who appear to have been defeated by either not only public opinion but by their enemies. So my guess is the only way out for us Jews is through.
You always want to be the strong horse. I'm curious in a minute, John. Who are the young Jewish Americans who are going to be, like you, like your father, like Matt, like Seth? Who's the 25-year-old? Is there a Charlie Kirk among the Jewish diaspora in America?
I mean, there are plenty. There are plenty, but they are, first of all, they are, as is true of Charlie Kirk, they are religious. They are religious Jews. They are Jews of faith. They are Jews whose faith ties them to Zionism intrinsically, because Judaism is Zionism. Judaism is a religion about becoming a nation and then taking control of the land that God has given us and led us to through the Exodus. And that is what Judaism is. And the more you follow the precepts of the faith, the more important Israel will be and is to you. And the more such people, I think, can speak to people of faith in the United States as opposed to the secular.
Well said. Important. Well, very well said. Have an easy fast, John. I'll see you on the other side of Yom Kippur. Thank you for joining me an hour before you have to get to all that business. Much appreciated. Commentary Magazine podcast. Don't miss it every day. Joined by United States Senator Dan Sullivan, who represents the great, and I mean in every way, state of Alaska. Senator, welcome. We got three things to talk about. Two are great news. Number one, the Guardians won. Number two, Alaska has a great new Attorney General, Steve Cox, who's a friend of yours and mine. But then number three, Chuck Schumer shut down the federal government for apparently no reason whatsoever. It's a Seinfeld shutdown. It's about nothing. Did we lose you?
What's that?
I said, what do you make of the Seinfeld shutdown? Chuck Schumer shut down the government for no reason whatsoever.
Well, there was a reason. And the reason Schumer had to atone for his left-wing heresy when he kept the government open in March. So Hugh, this is the Schumer shutdown, as you know, but it's only because he's scared of his left flank and he's genuflecting to the left wing of the Democratic Party. And that's what's literally driving this shutdown. By the way, most of the Democrat senators I talk to are ticked about this. They can't say it publicly, but this is a left-wing Schumer shutdown that benefits nobody.
Now, you had Senator King and two Democrats, Senator King being an independent, but he caucuses with the Democrat, crossed over last night. So you're at 55 already. You need 5 more Democrats. When do you think they'll come over, Senator Sullivan?
Look, I hope they come over soon because everybody's seeing this for what it is. That makes no sense. Remember, Hugh, this is a clean CR. And by the way, it's a bipartisan clean CR, both in the House and both in the Senate. By that, it just continues to fund government at current levels, no side benefits one way or the other. And we do these on a regular basis, in my view, too often. But the fact that Schumer at the last minute came in and said, I need these giant demands. By the way, look at what they want. $1 trillion of spending in the next 4 weeks. Once again, Medicaid for illegals. Schumer once said that making huge demands on a clean CR is, quote, political idiocy. Well, guess who's committing political idiocy right now? Chuck Schumer with the Schumer shutdown. And he's doing it just to appease the left wing. And hopefully, most of the Democrats are going to see this and work with us to pass the clean CR.
Senator, I asked John Cornyn earlier in the show about Texans and whether or not they had the score right. And he said yes. The people you talked to in Alaska, you haven't been back since this happened, obviously. But do they understand this is just the silliest shutdown ever because it's about nothing?
Look, I was doing a lot of press back home last night and even today, and sometimes these shutdowns can be confusing. The continuing resolutions can be confusing. The people in my great state are working hard, defending our country up there in the northern flank of America and the Arctic, putting their kids through school. So they're not always paying attention to this, but we're trying to just let them know this is the Schumer shutdown. I agree with you. Maybe we'll call it the Schumer Seinfeld shutdown, about nothing, but it is about, appeasing the left wing Democratic base.
It's really about
That's what
AOC.
it's really about, and it's a shame that America is being put through this because Schumer's scared of being primaried by a congresswoman from Brooklyn.
Now, Senator, you love the military. You served for many years. This will begin to bite the military very, very quickly, especially when E1s and E2s and E3s don't get paid in 2 weeks. Do you think they'll crumble by then? Because they've never had J.D. Vance at the White House podium either, laying down covering fire for everyone on our team because, man, he was good at the podium today.
Yeah, look, I sure hope that we get it resolved by then. And, I think our military, they're going to get their paycheck tomorrow, I believe. I was checking into that. So it'll be within 2 weeks. But this just shows the senselessness of this right now, Hugh. I mean, it's a dangerous world out there. Democrats and Republicans certainly agree with that. And the fact that we got the Schumer shutdown impacting all of these things. And it does bring uncertainty. If you're that Marine deployed somewhere around the world and all of a sudden you're thinking about you're not going to get a paycheck in 2 weeks and you got to deal with car payments and other things, this is an added stress you don't need. So, look, the good news is we saw 3 Democrats last night who crossed the Schumer. That took a lot of guts, by the way, but there is probably 15 or 20 more that want to do it. And I think you can see a jailbreak here, hopefully soon, because the Schumer shutdown
well phrased.
Nobody except, Schumer's putting personal politics above the interests of the nation, our military, and even his own party, his own senators see that.
A jailbreak is a perfect analogy because they are stuck in the shutdown with Chuck Schumer, and they don't have an AOC to worry about. John Ossoff cannot win in Georgia by shutting down the federal government in Georgia. And I don't think in Michigan it's going to work either. It's going to help Mike Rogers, the Republican. I can't imagine anyone of the Democrats being assisted by this. Do you? You know him. Is there anyone that's actually cheering him on?
No, it's the opposite. Like I said, I'm not going to name names here. Some of these, a lot of these folks are my friends. They're on the other side of the aisle, but I work with them a lot. But I mean, take a look at what was going on the Senate floor today. We voted again to pass the clean CR. The 3 senators, joined us. But I know there's a lot more who want to join us, and they're tired of this. And look, most leaders in the Senate, when you're chosen leader, you watch out not only for your party, but the institution of the Senate. And this leader, the Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer, is the opposite. He doesn't give a damn about the institution of the Senate. Think about it, Hugh. I mean, he went to get rid of the legislative filibuster on this baloney charge of Jim Crow 2.0. It was purely base left-wing politics. He cares more about left-wing politics in his own personal hide than what he's supposed to be doing leading his party. And I think the members of his party are getting fed up with it.
Last question. You worked with Harry Reid. I don't think you were there when George Mitchell was there, but Harry Reid was Machiavelli spun from the pages of The Prince. Really wicked smart, as they say in Boston. I used to think Chuck Schumer was that way. I don't think so anymore, because I really don't see any way they can spin this. So last minute to you, Senator, do they have any talking points at all on this?
No, they don't. And take a look at what's going on the campaign trail. You have all these people running for the Senate on the Democratic side, and they're being asked, hey, will you support Chuck Schumer as Senate Majority Leader? I think every single Democrat challenger running for the Senate right now is either is saying, I'm not going to answer that, or saying no. So I think his days as leader are numbered for the very reasons you just say. When the members of the Senate, either party, think that their leader is solely looking out for his own political hide, that's when you start to lose faith in the leadership. And you're starting to see that right now on the floor of the United States Senate. The Schumer shutdown is certainly the most avoidable shutdown ever.
I think Chris Murphy is measuring the drapes.
About nothing.
I think Chris Murphy was seen in the Democratic leader's office measuring drapes because Chuck Schumer led him over the cliff, Thelma and Louise style. Senator Dan Sullivan, great to see you. Hope the next time we talk to you, the Guardians will advance to the American League Divisional Series. Sarah Bedford is senior correspondent and investigative reporter for the Washington Examiner. Sarah, I've got a question that you're uniquely poised to answer. There is a federal government shutdown, and there's a Virginia governor's race. I had Lieutenant Governor Sears on yesterday. She seemed pretty ebullient. What do Democrats think they're doing to their fellow Democrat in Virginia?
That's a great question, but Spanberger herself doesn't seem all that concerned about it. She did not vote for the continuing resolution to keep the government open. My take is that Democrats are pretty accustomed to the national media, the DC press corps, reliably blaming Republicans for shutdowns. That's not happening here. Even the DC media is being forced by the reality of the situation to put the blame where it belongs on Democrats for this shutdown. It's polling abysmally, even with Democratic voters, and it's not clear that people like Spanberger and House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries anticipated the way that this was going to be framed immediately out of the gate.
Let me give you a little clue. Usually getting a senator booked requires a week of prep and talking to their comms director. We're flooded with senators who want to talk on the air about the shutdown. Flooded by Republicans. What's that tell you, Sarah?
I think that tells you they could not be happier with the situation. It's honestly playing out perfectly for the Trump White House and Republicans. They are not taking the blame, even in places that are usually eager to apportion it to them. The Democrats have absolutely no leverage whatsoever. And this also is a golden opportunity for the Trump White House to make some of the cuts that they've been itching to do anyway. So there's almost no downside right now for Republicans. All of the risk is on Democrats.
Former Congressman John Campbell was on the program earlier. Russ Vogt worked for him years ago when John was running the Republican study group. And he tells me that Russ Vogt, in all the best sense of the word, is utterly ruthless when it comes to spending. Do the Democrats have any idea what they've done here?
They're about to find out if they don't. I mean, I get the sense that perhaps Russ Vogt is even being held back right now by perhaps others in the Trump administration who want to wait and see how this plays out a little bit before they unleash Russ Vogt. Because so far, the only sorts of cuts that we've seen are to infrastructure projects in New York and New Jersey, for example, tinkering around the margins, but you haven't seen anything like the sweeping types of cuts that may actually legally be within Russ Vogt's purview while the government is shut down.
Let me play for you, because you're a veteran Beltway journalist. This never happens. Cut number 5, J.D. Vance, the vice president, at the podium in the White House press corps earlier today.
So the president's been posting some images of Leader Jeffries and Senator Schumer.
I saw.
Recently. You've said that you're interested in good faith negotiations with these leaders, but what message does that send? Is it helpful to post pictures of Leader Jeffries in a sombrero if you're trying to have good faith talks with him?
Oh, I think it's funny. The president's joking, and we're having a good time. You can negotiate in good faith while also poking a little bit of fun at some of the absurdities of the Democrats' positions, and even, poking some fun at the absurdity of the Democrats themselves. I mean, I'll tell Hakeem Jeffries right now, I make this solemn promise to you that if you help us reopen the government, the sombrero memes will stop. And I've talked to the President of the United States about that. Now,
spontaneous laughter from the White House press corps is not something you hear very often when the barb is directed at the Democrats. Do you ever hear that?
Never. I mean, imagine Vice President Kamala Harris going out to try to diffuse a controversial social media post and also to navigate the administration through something as complicated as a shutdown. And you can't, because she wouldn't have been capable of doing that. It's really interesting to me that they're putting J.D. Vance out as the face of messaging on this shutdown right now, but clearly he's very skilled at it.
I don't know if you're old enough to remember Spooky, the AC-130 that is the super gunship that was used in Afghanistan. Do you remember that?
I do not.
No, well, when Spooky flew over the Taliban, they ran away because it generates so much heat and fire. J.D. Vance is like Spooky. He's just raining down lead on talking points. There's nothing, there's nowhere for the Democrats to hide. I don't want to be confirmation biasing myself into a red bubble, but I think the Democrats are getting slaughtered on this. What do you think?
I think that's an accurate statement. Donald Trump does love a deal, though. I think there's some fear among conservatives and other Republicans that they have Democrats over barrel right now, and to give any concessions to allow Democrats to save face to reopen the government when you are going to see the consequences play out in Virginia in the gubernatorial race, where there are a lot of federal workers concentrated there, and in New Jersey, where you have infrastructure projects being shut down. Conservatives don't want to see concessions.
I don't think, Donald Trump was a real estate developer before he was president. When you've got leverage in that business, I represented him for 30 plus years, you don't give it away. So I'm not worried about that. But Sarah C. Bedford, I am going to be following you on X because you'll have the latest when it breaks out of the Capitol. Follow Sarah on X at Sarah C. Bedford. You will have missed maybe Leland Bittert when we began the show with Leland, and then I broke the interview into 2 parts because I needed to cover the shutdown. So he's back at the end of the program, and I'll put the rest online tonight, and we'll play some more tomorrow. His brand new book is Born Lucky. I like broadcast rule number 1 that I broke. I didn't explain the title. It's because Leland's nickname was Lucky, which I didn't know until I read Born Lucky, because he had a near miss at birth and like 1,000 near misses afterwards. There are 2 people I want to make sure I talk about with you, Leland. The first, I don't know if you ever met Terry Hess. Did you ever meet Terry Hess, or did you just hear about him from your dad?
My dad's friend. This is my dad's friend who gave my dad How to Win Friends and Influence People, the great Dale Carnegie book. To be fair, probably, and you see a little bit of this in Born Lucky, that my dad, people would say, was on the spectrum at some point here or there, but not nearly to the extent that I am, and certainly not nearly to the extent that I was before he started working with me. So that was Dad's friend who understood sort of what Dad needed, and Dad tried with the same thing with me. Hey, as I got older, hey, why don't you read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People? I was far too gone, or gone's not the right word. I was too far down or on or away, whatever adjective you want to use, on the spectrum to understand how to win friends and influence people into practice. So that began the coaching process, Hugh, that we just talked about.
Yeah, the 6 years between junior high and high school, I think probably the most important message of the book is they don't define your life. And especially if you're a kid with intellectual disabilities, junior high and high school are horrific. But your dad's friend Terry Hess gave him Dale Carnegie, and he told him, don't tell people you're reading this book. It's like he gave him the cheat code to Dale Carnegie because he knew your dad would go out and tell everyone he was reading this book. But what's amazing is that you have a guy, Rob McClain, who lets you join Theta Chi at Northwestern. Do these guys know they're in the book, by the way? Did you write everyone and tell them they're in the book?
No. Rob knows he's in the book because he and I are still dear friends. And of all things, his wife is in the book publicity business and promotion business. And she's been kind enough to offer a little bit of help on the side here to spread the word of Born Lucky and to show parents that there really is hope. And I would just say one sort of ... to you. It's not just intellectual disabilities. There's so many kids who are getting bullied and pushed around and crushed these days, Hugh. I think this book speaks to them and their parents too.
I think you're right.
About that. And, my dad always used to tell me the characteristics, the qualities, the personality traits, the work ethic that is getting you bullied and pushed around and isolated right now in middle school is what is going to make you successful later in life. The thing he didn't add in that, but is also true, is that having a horrible middle school experience is great training for a Washington newsroom.
And Jerusalem or Egypt during the Arab Spring. There's a lot of journalism in this book because Leland's had a lot of war stories, and I mean literally war stories. But I want to make sure I say on the air today, when you were dating the woman from the other channel in Orlando, not your wife.
Oh, God.
And she gave you the piece of advice. If it even crosses your mind, maybe I shouldn't say that on air, don't say it. That bit of advice is worth the price of the book for anyone who wants to go into broadcast. How many times have you used that?
1,000 times. And, I want to say, and I think this is really important, and one of the questions I've gotten as we've started talking about Born Lucky is, what is it like to date on the autism spectrum? For someone who has autism and always will, as I do. And I said, well, I don't know how to date not on the autism spectrum because I'm just me. And I now thankfully have a wife who is magnificent, and her EQ, her emotional intelligence, is about the temperature of the sun. So it tells you what it takes to put up with me. But there was a woman I was dating in Orlando who was an anchor, who was older. And I think she understood me to a certain extent. And she said, the way to not get in trouble on TV is not to not say bad things, but that if it even crosses your mind for a third of a second, should I or can I say this? Just don't say it. The answer is instantly and always no. And I think she knew that perhaps there were times I was going to think about things that I probably shouldn't say.
There's also in the book, you describe, there's always that guy or gal in a newsroom who, for whatever reason, hates you. And they just want to destroy your career for whatever reason. And God knows, we don't know what it is, but it's true. I've been in this for 35 years. There's always somebody that hates the other guy in the newsroom. And how you dealt with it being on the spectrum is interesting. But Leland, there weren't girls in your life until the girl that you wanted to date. So you tried to take up tennis until your dad said, I'll pay for every tennis lesson I can. You'll never play tennis. I think your dad must have had an amazing sense of humor, but he was at the bottom of the garage, at the driveway every day at 4:20 in the afternoon.
Yeah, he was. And this issue of trust with my dad was really important. So many kids now, parents of so many kids are told, hey, tell your kid they can do everything, right? Johnny and Sally are going to be great. Everybody gets participation trophies. Nothing that, there is no standards. There are no winners and losers and on and on. That was not the way it operated in my house. My dad realized that I wasn't going to be good at school. I wasn't going to have friends. I wasn't going to be good at athletics. So he created ways for me to earn self-esteem. Her self-esteem was earned, not given in our house. So 200 push-ups a day, starting when I was 5 days a week. And after 3 months, I would get a reward. I would get to go do something special. And it was to try and create situations outside of my peer group where I could succeed. That was number one. But I think number two, what is interesting that you are getting at is how Dad was always incredibly direct and blunt with me. And the tennis story is a perfect example of that. I really wanted to learn how to play tennis. Dad was a very gifted athlete, great tennis player, great golfer, on and on and on. And
I'm going to hold this until tomorrow. I'm going to hold it until tomorrow because it's too good of a story. I got to tell you right now, Born Lucky is a remarkable book. And I talked to Leland for 35 minutes today, and it's sold out of Amazon already twice. And he just sent me a note. It's back in stock. Harper and Collins is out there busy printing out Born Lucky, and it's going to sell and sell and sell because it will be an encouragement to everyone on the spectrum. It will be encouragement to their parents, their family, and their friends. It will be an encouragement to everybody who has any kids in their life anywhere, because it's about encouragement. It's about structure, kindness, relentless honesty, and it's very touching. It's a very moving book. Born Lucky by Leland Bitter. More tomorrow. Yom Kippur begins in about 35 minutes for our friends on the East Coast. Before they turn off all their electronics, if they're observant Jews, I want them to hear, and Christians across the United States, because our sponsor is the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. I love this organization. They do great work in Israel, especially as we approach the second anniversary of the massacre on 10/7. Listen to what Yael Eckstein, the president of the ICFJ, has to say.
The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is the largest philanthropic organization in Israel. We both provide ongoing support of food aid, and we distribute over 3 million meals out of soup kitchens across Israel every single year. But we are also agile. We are the first ones on the ground when a rocket strikes. We're there. We're providing the bulletproof vests and helmets. These are saving lives. And praise God, we are his servants to be able to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, shelter the poor, and to be there, just as the scriptures say, Nachamu, Nachamu ami, comfort, comfort my people, especially during times like this.
And if you go to HughHewitt.com, there's a banner at the top, ICFJ. Israel still needs a lot of help. They'll need help for a long time after this war-weary country. Even if the peace deal I talked with John Podhoretz comes to be, they will need help. Please be as generous as you can. The banner is at HughHewitt.com. It's at the top. You can't miss it. And I got to close the show because I got to remind you, I'm in the Relief Factor studio. And they put up with a lot with me. They put up with my keeping an eye on the Guardians. Big win today, game number 3 in the best of 3. Tomorrow, 1 for the Tigers, 1 for the Guards. Game, the rubber match, the rubber game, tomorrow. And I'll have taken my Relief Factor in the morning. I'll be on Fox and Friends at 8:30 in the morning, by the way, if you want to check in on that. We'll be talking about the Schumer shutdown. But Relief Factor keeps me not only on the air by sponsoring, but it keeps me going from sunup till late in the night. When there's lots going on in the news business, you got to stay up and you got to work late. And that's fine. You got to get up early. That's fine. Some of you are in your car right now and something is bothering you. Your shoulder, your neck, your elbow, maybe even your gas pedal. Maybe it hurts. And sometimes it's just your rear end sitting. Well, Relief Factor will help you. 4 natural supplements, all in one pack. I take it every day. You can order the starter pack for $19.95, 3-week supply. You take 3 a day on the first week, 2 a day on the second week, and then you're on 1 a day for as long as you want to remain pain-free from the minor aches and pain. It's not going to heal a broken arm. It's not magic. All it is it helps your body's anti-inflammatory system get rid of the mild and minor irritations that drive you crazy. And you know what I'm talking about if you're stuck in traffic right now. Give Relief Factor a call. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. 1-800-4-RELIEF, or head on over to relieffactor.com. The starter pack is there, $19.95, less than $1 a day, relieffactor.com. Opening the show tomorrow with Majority Leader John Thune. If the Schumer shutdown is still going on, it probably will be. They're going to take a vote tonight, I think, before Yom Kippur begins, and then they'll be back after the holiday ends and the observance ends. And I'll be covering out throughout the day tomorrow for those of you still listening or watching the Hugh Hewitt Show.